gentlemen, everybody. Hey, how you doing out there? This is Colin Tanner from GamesUnderPressure.com, and I'm here with your first hour of Hakuoki Stories of the Shinsengumi. Not gonna lie, I had to practice that a bit, because I never actually heard of this game before. It's supposedly a graphic novel type thing, visual novel. Never played a visual novel before. They're kind of infamous, you could say. With a lot of pornographic ones being released throughout the United States. Thank you, Something Awful, for informing me all about that. And yeah, there wasn't much coming out this week. I know that they had MLB The Show that was released. I assume that that game's probably getting covered somewhere. But this title right here, actually kind of difficult to find. I pre-ordered it. Showed up to the shop over at on Tuesday. They didn't have it. Went, oh, maybe some other place has it. Nope. Oh, here we go. Anime intro. So anyway, I had to wait until Wednesday to get my hands on this, and later than usual. Shipment came in late, and you know, I'm not sure how many games these guys have put out in the past. Idea Factory, I've heard of them. Kisa Design Factory, I guess I've heard of a lot of these guys, but I guess they're just not so popular around here. You know, I am not tremendously familiar with this series in the slightest. I will admit that. I like a fair amount of anime in the past, manga too, but visual novels, not a clue. Not a clue. So let's get in and see what this is like. Record of service. Oh, okay. Cool. I guess it'll be like a choose your own adventure type thing. I'm not sure. What kind of settings could this possibly have? Huh. Read, sure. Okay. Wait, romance animation? Oh boy. What have we gotten into? Sure. What am I doing? Okay, whatever, guys. Let's actually get into this game and see what it is. And if you're a big fan of the series and you're like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, what an asshole. You're right. But we're going to learn together. Oh, yeah. Chizuru. Sure. Sure. Yes. Why not? This is a work of fiction, but some elements draw inspiration from certain historical figures and events. Okay. I will say it's pretty cool seeing a game like this come out in America. This is the type of stuff that if, like the PS1 era or PS2 era, I would be dying to get my hands on. No joke. Different time though. This is on the PlayStation 3, I should mention. So this is Kyoto. There's no voice acting. Not even Japanese. Okay. With a simple hellos passing between people, blah blah blah. They nod and smile as almost if they were family, not strangers out on errands. Still, there was something else as well. Something that made the city feel strangely cold. Almost as though there was a great invisible wall, shutting out anyone who wandered in the country. It wasn't particularly comfortable, I had to admit. No, that's all in my head. I had walked quite some distance to reach Kyoto, and it occurred to me that my mind and body were both very tired. Even so, tiredness was no reason for me to stand about, feeling sorry for myself. I couldn't afford to, after all. Excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what else to do. This is, with new, albeit forced resolve, I tried to stop a passerby. I'm sorry, I am a bit lost, could you? Please tell me that there's some voice acting in this game. I don't care if it's just Japanese. What am I supposed to do now? I know the feeling. I was lost again, but in a different sort of way. I sighed and found myself up at the darkened sky. The sun was beginning to set. The people I'd spoken to hadn't been unkind, and they'd give me the directions I needed, but couldn't he have chose a better time to leave the city? Apart from my father, jump to encyclopedia, there was only one person in the city I could rely on, Dr. Matsumoto. Okay. Dutch educated doctor in the service of Shogunete and the father of the protagonist had been missing since shortly after his arrival in Kyoto. Okay. Matsumoto, a respected doctor who worked for the Tokugawa Shogunate. I don't know that word. Okay. Sorry, guys. Not my language. Try my best. Dr. Matsumoto was a doctor in the service to that is nice. Military governed by run by samurai. In this game, it refers to the Tokugawa. Okay. I never met him myself, but my father put a great deal of trust in the man. Told me that I should run into any trouble during his absence. That if I should run into any trouble, I should contact Dr. Matsumoto. Fortunately, Dr. Matsumoto was apparently out of town on business and would not return for some time. Was I too hasty? Perhaps I should have waited. True. It is rather rude to visit unannounced, which was why I had sent a letter ahead of me. Of course, if he had been gone for very long, then he almost certainly had not read my letter. Almost certainly not read. Perhaps, I thought, I should have waited for a reply before traveling alone to a city I've never even seen. But, no. I knew I could not have waited any longer. He just saying this out loud to himself? This must be a Japanese thing I'm not quite understanding. Is something wrong, fella? He paused for a moment and looked at me. Ooh! Yay! Voice acting! Oh, thank God, I don't have to keep narrating. Oh, I guess I do for my character. Work again? He had been leaving the house often then, sometimes for days at a time. How long will you be gone? Voice acting? Oh? There was no hiding my disappointment. Nonetheless. That's not supposed to be one word, is it? Am I wrong? That's not... They do that. Nonetheless, I wasn't a child anymore. I could not beg him to go for some other foolishness. Yes, I'd be lonely, but I was much more worried for him. Please, father, be careful. They say the city of Kyoto is dangerous. He only smiled and nodded. I guess that's... Okay, you promise? Oh dear, guys, this is going to be a long first hour. Father kept his promise. A new letter arrived every day, and I scarcely had the time to respond before another would arrive. He told me that he worried about me, home all by myself. Then the letter stopped. A whole month passed, with no word from my father, and I began to worry. Father. They say Kyoto's full of Ronin. That's a samurai without a master, am I right? Samurais who have left their master. Yeah, look at me. Or have been stripped of their privileges. Ooh. Can also be used to refer to as a samurai who does not have a master to serve. Okay, cool. Guess there's a difference. Sure. Usually a samurai is paid by their house. First, the domain or clan that a samurai serves can also be used after a fashion or refer to the specific person a samurai serves. I feel like I'm just, okay, great. Ronin with no house to report to often rob people in order to make ends meet. They're nothing more than violent criminals who hide behind the image of the samurai. Jerks. Such is the state of the city of Kyoto, the city of the Ronin. Small wonder, then, that I was worried for my father's safety. My mind would what? Concoct? Why does it look weird? Am I missing a letter here? Just me. Concoct horrible possibilities, and I inevitably found myself depressed and tense. First, I suppose I need to find a place to stay. Lost in thought, I hadn't noticed that the night had already fallen. If I was honest with myself, I hadn't the first idea how long it might take to find my father. I had taken some money with me, but it wasn't much. Enough to last me a month. I hoped, if I used it wisely. If I could find father in that time, so much the better. If not, hopefully Dr. Matsumoto would return before my funds ran out. Should I be unable to find either of them, then it seemed I would be forced to return home. Okay, I guess. Well, at any rate, yeah, sure. I'm to try and be as frugal as possible. And so I lengthened my stride and set off down the street. Fortunately for me, men's clothing was much more conducive to such a pace that my usual dress would have been. Okay. I decided earlier on that Kyoto is far too dangerous for a girl from the country to explore. I'm playing as a girl from the country? I guess I didn't really look at that picture. And then it would be wise for me to dress like a man, or at least a boy. My disguise, such as it was, had proven successful, and I had made all the way to Kyoto unmolested. Whew! Good. Perhaps that success had gone to my head and let me think that a girl dressed as a boy could explore Kyoto as she pleased. Where are you going with this? Do not tell me you're gonna go. But Kyoto is not a safe place. I should have remembered that. Instead, I convinced myself that whatever dangers city had didn't apply to me. Uh-oh. Ishiro sounds pretty dangerous. But discover otherwise. Eh? I spun around in the street. In front of me were 3 men. Ronin. Can I help you? I did my best to keep my voice as calm as I reached in what I felt was a nonchalant wave for my Kodachi? Originally a shortened katana, by the end of the Edo period it refers to a large wakashisa. I don't know. It's usually worn as half as a pair with a larger sword, such as a katana. I've seen those. I know what those are. Sure. My father had made me take lessons in self-defense. I'd kept with them and actually done rather well. My skill was enough to defend against most attacks. Then again, perhaps it was my confidence in my skill that had put me in this situation in the first place. I'd messed up and let my guard down. My fault. There was a chance I could take them on and win. But there were 3 of them, and 1 of me. Only then did I realize I was far more interested in my sword than they were in me. But this is... Sword wasn't just some blade I'd picked up. It had been passed down through my family for generations. There was no way I could give it to the Ronin. Fortunately, I had a feeling they wouldn't understand. In such a situation, the best decision was undoubtedly to retreat. And so I turned and ran as fast as my legs would carry me. Huh? Gosh, they sure didn't give up easily, do they? They sure don't give up easily, do they? I felt I'd been running for quite a while, but I still couldn't hear the Ronin behind me, cursing loudly. Still could hear him. I ducked into the alleyway and flattened myself against the wall. Like Solid Snake. Or, whatever, Tenchu people. Whatever you want. After deciding they weren't too close, I kept farther into the alley. Someone had left a couple of sheets of wood. Couple sheets of wood? Okay, leaning against one of the houses. It was a perfect spot to hide. With luck, I thought as I knelt down to shuffle under them, this will get me out of this mess. Oh no. Huh? Something was wrong. I'd expected to hear the Ronin yelling to each other, looking for me, but... Seconds turned into minutes, I heard nothing, and I was about to sneak out and have a look when... Somebody, like, hit him with a sword. They began to scream. Okay. What? My plan to investigate was immediately halted. Remaining silent and hidden was clearly more important. Still... Patosai the Manslayer. I don't know. It was then that true fear began to set in. There was something out there, something very, very dangerous, something quite possibly lethal. The possibilities were, well, my imagination conjured up no shortage of gruesome theories. Even so, I could feel that itch of curiosity. I wanted to know what was out there. Slowly, carefully, I edged up to the corner and looked out. Cold moonlight glared back at me from the bare blade of a drawn sword. My eyes followed the blade up and to the arm that held it. Clad in a coat of light blue. Had this person saved me? But no sooner had it appeared that hope was dashed. Oh boy. I could hear the Ronin beg for his life as he stumbled back. The person in the blue coat said nothing, just stepped forward. He raised his sword. Okay then. A high screeching laugh cut through the man's scream. Blade fell through the air, more like a butcher's cleaver than a sword. No technique, no skill, just death. The scream turned into sudden wet, hot. The scream turned suddenly wet, hot, and disappeared like air leaving a half-empty bellows. You know, like a half-empty bellows, guys. My eyes went wide. I had just watched a murder. Whatever strength adrenaline had given me was suddenly gone. My legs gave way, and I crumpled to the ground. My eyes had gone so wide, I thought they might never close. Okay. Ronin had died with the first blow, but as I watched, the blades kept falling, carving deep lines into the corpse. You know, I would love to see the visual novel. I'd like to visualize this part. The soft sip of a blade through flesh, the crack as it stuck bone, the silent creep of blood across the ground. I felt nothing from them but madness. Their only desire was raw, animal violence. Whatever they were, it wasn't human. They were broken. I don't know. Sound pretty efficient to me. Ugh. I could feel my throat closing up. I couldn't breathe. A warm, dark smell brushed against my face. It took me a moment to recognize the coppery tang of... Oh, okay, coppery tang of blood. An icy bolt of fear ran through my spine, crawling its way out into my limbs and freezing me into place. I was terrified. Okay. What was I gonna do? What could I do? Okay. You have to run, Shizuru. I forced my jaw open and drew a ragged breath. This was the only chance I would get. I had to. But my body, still numb with fear, was less than responsive. I lurched sideways into the wood stacked against the building. With the rough clatter, it collapsed. Oh, okay. Creatures turned, and their blue coats drenched in blood. Hideous grins split in their inhuman faces, and they shook with animal excitement at finding fresh prey to slaughter. Fresh prey to slaughter. I had to run. I couldn't die yet. But my legs refused to move. The hideous cackling laughter began again. I was gonna die. My body was frozen with terror. I couldn't even scream. That was it. This was the end. I'm really sorry I'm doing all this reading out loud, but like, what else am I gonna do? You know, I got nothing to do this first hour. I watched them raise their bloody swords. The moon glinted off the metal. Flash of light. Soft splatter of blood. I could feel it. Warm and sticky. Bile began to rise in my throat. Before, disgusted, took hold, I heard a voice. I hope I hear a voice. Okay. Good to hear a voice. The word suggested disappointment, but the voice sounded happy. And he spoke. The strange man smiled, almost as if he were enjoying himself. He laughed. Man called Sato aside with the air of a long-suffering companion and looked over at me. Okay. This is a little more like what I was expecting, so this is okay, you know. Two people yip-yapping at me and they stand in place, but whatever, it's a visual novel, what do you want, you know? His tone was light, but his words confirmed my fears. I had left the frying pan, yes, but I was now on the fire. Alright. Perhaps. Then there was someone in charge of these two. Their conversation seemed to suggest that they were part of an organization of some sort. As I had thought about it, I remembered hearing stories of a group of men with blue coats. Sure. My thoughts were interrupted by the dark shape sliding into view. Oh, purple eyes, of course. Oh? I swallowed hard. The moonlight shone off his smooth, dark hair for reasons I couldn't fathom. In that moment, the light on his hair made me think of fluttery flower petals, almost as if the cherry trees were blooming out of season. Cherry blossoms? Cherry trees? Voice was cold and quiet, like a blade of ice. There's a lot of ice references here. Blue-white moonlight lit his slender face and shone from the blade as he pointed at my chest. So that's sword is going towards your chest, or my chest, but if you're watching this in full screen. The fucking blade's going towards you, man. But it wasn't the sword that made my breath catch in my throat. It was his eye. They were fierce and hard, but somewhere behind him I could catch a glimpse of something else. There could be no doubt that he was prepared to kill me, and yet he looked troubled. Not kindness, but perhaps, what do you want to say there? Mercy, that's it. You're the guy with the sword, boss. I'll do whatever you want. I nodded. There was no doubt he meant every word he said. He stared out at me for a moment, then grimaced with a sigh and put his sword away. What? There's a 2-second delay, so if I'm reading ahead, you know why. I was too surprised to stop myself from speaking, and it quickly became apparent that I wasn't the only one. As he spoke to the man he called Hijikata, okay. Called Hijikata. His eyes narrowed. The man called Hijikata frowned back at him. Brilliant dialogue. Ugh, only 22 minutes in, huh? I wasn't quite sure what they meant, but it was clear enough that what I'd seen was something they wanted to keep hidden. Still, the more they said, the more I understood, despite the fact that none of us wanted such a thing. The way he looked at me made me feel as if he had read my mind. Okay. Perhaps it would be best if I didn't think too hard about it. Things I wasn't supposed to think about. Huh. Man called Sato spoke with quite confidence. He glared down, possibly looking for another witness, though he looked down at the creature he had killed, almost as though he had forgotten the whole ordeal. He peered down at the corpse, his face an emotionless mask. When he looked back up at his companions, however, his eyes narrowed. He was right. Even I heard stories about a gang of cruel men in blue coats who cut people down in the streets. But, no, don't think, ignore them. I did my best to be stern with myself, but it came out sounding more pleading than commanding. My mind swirled with thoughts and worries. I began drawn into their world. A world where there is nothing strange in carrying on a normal conversation in the dead of night with corpses for company. Yeah, it's my life every day. Hijikane thought for a moment before he spoke.
羽織だけ脱がせとけ。あとは山崎くんが何とかしてくれんだろう。
御意。大使が切り殺されてるなんて、僕たちにとっても一大事ですしね。
He gave a derisive bark of laughter.
ま、あとは俺らが黙ってりゃ、世間も勝手に納得してくれるだろうよ。
He looked directly at me when he spoke, and I got the distinct feeling that his words weren't for his companions. It was common for people to be murdered in Kyoto. It was a dangerous city after all. I knew that, of course. But to see it happen, that was something else entirely. If death was such an easy thing in Kyoto, I thought, then the city itself must surely be bad. We're all mad here, Alice.
ねえ、ところでさ、助けてあげたのに、お礼の一つもないの？
Huh? I didn't realize immediately that he was speaking to me. When I did, my eyes went wide. What do you mean, you shaved me? Well, I did have a point. Despite their threats, they had saved my life. I stood up as steadily as I could manage, brushed off some of the dirt off my clothes, and bowed. Thank you very much. I apologize for not thanking you earlier. There was so much going on. I was a little confused there. Sorry about that, bro. I glanced up at them tentatively. The man called Sato was showing some confusion of his own. His eyes were wide and he had an expression I couldn't place. Hijikata looked as though he'd taken a bite of something sour. I know it seems weird to say that, but he told me I should say thanks, so I I looked up, and Saito and Hijikata were both looking pointedly at anything but me, and the third man was shaking with laughter. Be nice to hear some of that laughter.
あ、ごめん。そうだよね。僕が言ったんだもんね。
He broke out in laughter again, so much so that he was forced to wipe a few tears from his eyes as he straightened up.
どういたしまして。僕は沖田総司と言います。礼儀正しい子は嫌いじゃない。
Doesn't sound so hilarious to me. Thank you for helping me. Not quite sure what else to do. I bowed again.
わざわざ自己紹介してんじゃねえよ。
副長、お気持ちはわかりますが、まず移動を。
Whatever mirth I might have inspired gone, the man called Sato spoke with quiet urgency. Does that U and that R and urgency seem like there's like a bit of distance between them, or is that just me? Hijikata nodded. The man who called himself Okita grabbed hold of my wrist, gave a smile, and began to lead me down the street. Lean down. You know where I was I was worried where this story was going before. I'm not gonna make it up. I mean, Japan. I mean, come on. His grip was a touch too tight to be friendly. His fingers like iron cables across my arm. There was no question about my situation. If I ran, I would die quickly at least, but still. Even if I did as I was told, my life was in the hands of these strange men. I set my jaw and stood up as straight as I could. My eyes met those Sato's as he looked at me from blood-stained clothes.
己のために最悪を想定しておけ。刺していいようには転ばない。
His words were like daggers in my like a dagger. Like his words were like a dagger in my stomach. What was going to happen to me? Was I going to die? Was I? Ellipses? Okay. As we walked through the cold Kyoto night, I felt horror began to crawl its way up my spine once again. The cause of my horror wasn't the gruesome end that almost certainly awaited me, but something else entirely. I'd spoken with these men and watched them speak to one another, not feet from with a still warm corpse soaked in blood. That I had done such a thing terrified me in an altogether different way. Perhaps I thought this was what it was like to go mad. Wow, I didn't really think I was going to be reading out loud the whole time. I thought there was going to be Japanese voice acting the whole way through. Sitting here. Just reading out loud. I think I need to go take this show to the library and hope those kids find out what's going on with Curious George. The man in the yellow suit. Yellow hat, yellow suit. I don't know. Was it morning? What had happened to me? Ah, yes. Right. All at once, the events of the previous night rushed back. It was only... If only this was my room, I thought. They had tied me up quite well, so all I could do was wriggle around in the bed, twisting the blankets around me. I wished pointlessly I knew that I were back home. I wished pointlessly I knew that I were back home, waking up on my warm futon. Am I reading that incorrectly? Let's just keep going with this, kids. I wished pointlessly I knew that I were back home, waking up on my warm futon. We've all been there, guys. If only this was a very strange nightmare. But it was not. I had met those men the night before, and they'd taken me with them. The headquarters of the Shinsengumi. Okay, what is that? A military unit made up of Ronin that the propose of which was to restore public order in Kyoto and counteract the local anti-shogunate forces. Shogunate? What that? Sounds more Spanish when I say it. It doesn't really look like it's in 720p. It doesn't look like it's an HD game. Point that out, but come on. What will happen to me now? Sighed and laid down to wait my fate. It was at that moment the door slid open and a kind-looking man stepped through. I'm Kelsey Grammar. With a soft smile, he introduced himself as Inoue, captain of the Shinsengumi 6th Division, a native of Edo. He studied swordplay with Kondo, Hijikade, and Okata. He's sometimes called Gen by his friends. Oh, I played Street Fighter Alpha 3. I know who Gen is, and obviously he's from the original Street Fighter. So this is connected to Street Fighter's canon.
すまんな、こんな扱いで。今縄を緩めるから少し待ってくれ。
His smile quirked as he removed my ropes, working quickly and skillfully. My wrists, however, were left bound. Thank you. I bowed and he let me out a short laugh.
ちょっと来てくれるかい？今朝から幹部連中であんたについて話し合っているんだが、あんたが何を見たのか確かめておきたいってことになってね。
Okay. I nodded and did my best to stand up. My body's still a bit unsteady after being tied up all night. The man who called himself Inoue? I don't know, was very polite and almost kind. It was quite clear that I was to do as I was told. He must have been able to guess my thoughts, because he smiled at me and winked.
心配しなくても大丈夫さ。なりは怖いが気のいい奴らだよ。
Oh! I wasn't sure what to think of that. Even at home, I'd heard rumors of the vicious Shinsengumi. They weren't pleasant rumors. Hard to imagine that the people in charge of such an organization were, ellipses, nice? As they say, nice? Inoue led me to a room and opened the door. I stepped inside and found myself surrounded by the leaders of the Shinsengumi. Their eyes dug into me like so many knives. Like so many knives. I froze just past the threshold and swallowed.
Ohayo. 昨日はよく眠れた?
Oh, I remembered him. Okita, perhaps I was surrounded by the strange men, but it was somehow comforting to see a face I recognized. Okay. Captain of the Shinsengumi 1st Division. He is a native of Edo, a brilliant swordsman who studied swordsmanship with Kondo and Hijikata. Okay. Kondo? I don't know. Even if it was the face of a rather frightening man who was almost certainly willing to be able to kill me. Well, it wasn't particularly comfortable. Hint, hint. I chose my words very carefully. Say that.
そうなんだ.
His face twisted sideways into a grin.
さっき僕が声をかけた時には君全然起きてくれなかったけど。
That's disturbing. He's kidding, right? Captain of the 3rd Division of the Shinsengumi, he's a native of Edo. He wields his sword in his left hand and fights with incredible skill. Good. Thank you, Japan, for not being extra creepy. Quite silent. I started at Okita. Sure. With his grin still playing around his face, he glanced over at Sato.
もう少し君の反応を見たかったんだけどな。はじめくんもひどいよね。勝手にバラすなんてさ。
I don't think Sato did anything wrong. You, on the other hand.
おい、てめえら。無駄口ばっか叩いてんじゃねえよ。
What? Hijikiri Hijakata's voice broke into no further insubordination. Okita struggled and was silent, but the smile stayed in his eyes. Okay. I don't know what that means. The commander of the Shinsengumi, he is a longtime friend of Haduo. Maybe that'll be it. Kaduo, and helped him form the Shinsengumi in Kyoto. Kaduo calls himself Toshi. Great, everyone's just got extra names. Sure.
でさ、土方さん。
The man who spoke was, well, he looked more like a boy than a man. I imagine the leaders of the Shinsengumi to be old, or at least middle-aged men, but they all look quite young, and historically, I'm sure that's not even remotely true. In fact, they looked like a group of young thugs.
ちっちゃいし細っこいな。まだガキじゃん、こいつ。
That was Kodu. Okay, captain of the Shinsengumi 8th Division. He is from Edo. He is the youngest captain, and he is known for being particularly energetic. Great. On our way from my bed, Inouye had given me a brief description of some of the people I was about to meet. Supposedly, Todoi was the youngest captain in the God damn it, you just made me read this fucking encyclopedia for no reason. Okay. He chuckled as he spoke, but the way he looked at me suggested that there was little he missed despite his humor. And across from him nodded with brows drawn as if he was quite serious about the subject. However, I remembered Inouye telling me that the two of the men were particularly somewhat immature, to put it nicely. He said that the one with the short hair was Nagakura, and the other with the long hair was Harada. Sounds so stupid when I'm reading these out loud. The captain of the Shinsengumi 2nd Division, he is also from Edo, and he is a skilled swordsman. Did they copy and paste this? He is upbeat and cheerful, frequently helps to raise the morale of the men under his command. Captain of the Shinsengumi 10th Division and a native of Edo, he is very skilled with the spear, which is his weapon of choice. There is a scar on his stomach from an attempt at an honorable suicide. Jesus Christ, alright, there's some backstory.
うるさいな、おじさん2人は黙ってなよ。ふざけんなよ、このお坊ちゃまが。俺らにそんな口聞いていいと思ってんのか？
平助におじさん呼ばわりされるほど年食ってねえよ。
てめえ、裏切るのかさ、はは、新八さん図星されて怒るって大人げねえよな。
Their back and forth had the feel of a routine that had been predated my arrival, but they couldn't quite hide the odd, inquisitive glare in my direction. I could sense something other than curiosity, though a feeling of animosity or resentment, perhaps. Despite their cheerful levity, they had not forgiven my presence among them. Suddenly, I wanted very much to go home. Me too. I wanted to leave that place and never return. Kinda getting that vibe. My chest tightened and I looked down at the floor, hoping that I might just wake up at home in my bed.
口さがない方ばかりで申し訳ありません。あまり怖がらない
God, they're just like, hey, here's the cast. There they all are. Guess it's like manga. His voice was calm and warm, and I felt myself relax, even if it was only a little. One way to phrase it. Colonel in the Shinsengumi, he's a native of Edo. Is anyone not native of Edo? Have we met anyone that was not native of Edo yet? He's essentially a consultant to the chief of the Shinsengumi, Isamari Kandua. I don't know how to pronounce that name, so. There was the faintest trace of a smirk on Hijikata's lips. As he finished speaking, the rest of the men nodded solemnly in agreement. I found it hard to believe that this man could be as scary as they all seemed, because he wears glasses and then he's going to be like totally badass and like, oh, you know, like every goddamn anime and manga.
おや、心外ですね。皆さんはともかく鬼の副長まで何を
Oh, I'm sorry, what? The man called Sanan smiled as he spoke and leaned back. His exposé delivered. Hijikata said nothing, but his own smile did not leave his face. Yeah.
トシと三男君は相変わらず仲がいいな。
My God. Hijikata and Sanan had sounded so cold when they had spoken to one another, not what I would have called friendly. Though the man who had spoken had certainly sounded as though he thought they were friends.
ああ、自己紹介が遅れたな。
One of the founders of the Shinsengumi, an organization created to help the peace in Kyoto. He is originally from Edo. Oh, so this guy's from Edo. Oh, right. The most important man in the Shinsengumi. Then. The most important man in the Shinsengumi. Then. The most important man in the Shinsengumi. Then. Sure.
それからそこの都市が副長で横にいる三男君は総長を務めて。
いや、近藤さん。なんでいろいろ教えてやってんだよ、あんたは。
まずいのか？
情報を与える必要がないんだったら黙ってる方が得策なん
At
じゃない
least this flute music will keep me company.
わざわざ教えてやる義理はないんじゃない？
Harada glanced over at Kodo and let out a bark of laughter.
ま、知られて困ることもねえよ。
Kandua looked rather disappointed when Hijikata spoke, but he perked up at Harada's words. This is hard, man. I don't know these names. I'd scarcely known him for 5 minutes, but already I could see that he was well liked by his men. He had that sort of charisma. Charisma spelt wrong? I can't tell. That simply drew you in. A man who was impossible to hate. Sometimes, sometimes fonts mess with me a little bit.
まずは改めて昨晩の話を聞かせてくれるか。
Kandu's glance moved to Sato, who gave a small nod and began to speak.
昨晩今日の都を巡回中に不老の老子と遭遇。相手が刀を抜いたため切り大使らは老子を無力化しましたが、その折彼らが失敗した様子を目撃されています。
As he finished, Sato turned to look at me. I swallowed and forced my mouth to open. I didn't see anything. Hijikata softened a little at my response, but Sato remained expressionless, and the smile on Okita's face didn't change. Oh, this is just taking forever.
なあ、お前本当に何も見てないのか？
Yes. I haven't seen anything so far. I'd hope that if I said it enough times, they might start to believe me.
見てないんならいいんだけどさ。あれ？掃除の話では、お前が大使でも助けてくれたって話だったが。
Nope. Nope, that's not true. I glanced over at Okita, but his smile still hadn't changed. Whatever he was thinking was a mystery to me. Mystery. I was running away from the Ronin, and then some people with the Shinsengumi uniforms showed up. Really, that's he sort of rescued me.
じゃあ、大使どもが老子を切り殺している場面はしっかり見ちゃったってわけだ。
Couldn't exactly deny that, but the music could, because where the music go. But I knew that if I just shut up then, they'd know for sure that I was lying. Uh-oh.
つまり最初から最後まで一部始終を見てたってことか。
I was completely at a loss.
お前、根が素直なんだろうな。それ自体は悪いことじゃないんだろうな。
I wasn't sure what to make of Harada's words. Oh, those words. My presence had not been a good thing for the Shinsengumi. Well, would their next words be the ones that commanded me to death for being in the wrong place at the wrong time? My voice shook, but I knew I had to try. I won't tell anyone, I promise. I'm sorry, guys. I have to entertain myself during this.
偶然老子に絡まれていたという君が敵側の人間だとまでは言いませんが、君に言うつもりがなくとも相手の誘導尋問に乗せられる可能性はある。
His voice was still warm, but his words were cold, and I began to feel my chances at life slip away.
話さないというのは簡単だが、こいつが新選組に義理立てする理由もない。
約束を破らない保証なんてないですし、やっぱり解放するのは難しいで
They
す。
had a point. But
ほら、殺しちゃいましょうよ。口封じするなら、それが一番じゃないですか。
I looked desperately at Kandua, who gave Okita a reproving look. Reproving look?
掃除、物騒なことを言うな。お上の民をむやみに殺して何とする。
Okita's smile disappeared, and he looked down at the floor. Boom.
そんな顔しないでくださいよ。今のはただの冗談ですから。
冗談に聞こえる冗談を言え。
Okita made an attempt to diverse snort, but intently at the wall. I'm sorry, guys. Alright.
しかし、なんとかならんのかね。まだこんな子供だろう。
私も何とかしてあげたいとは思いますが、うっかり漏らされても。
This was sold to me as a choose your own adventure kind of thing. I don't know what adventure I'm choosing here. Sanan paused for a moment, his brow furrowed, then he turned to Hijikata.
私は副長のご意見を伺いたいのですが。
With the responsibility of his position invoked, Hijikata had no choice. He sighed and glanced across the room, around the room.
俺たちは昨晩、指導に背いた大使を粛清した。こいつはその現場に居合わせた。
それだけだとおっしゃりたいんですか？
実際このガキの認識なんざその程度のもんだとは思うんだが。
けどよ、こればっかりは大義のためにも内密にしなきゃなんねえことなんだろ。新選組の大使は血に狂ってるなんて噂が立ちゃ、俺らのタイムにだって支障が出るぜ。
Shinpachi's words made sense, and they all knew it. Hijikata's face looked grim.
掃除の意見も一理あるとは思うけどな。まあ、俺は土方さんや近藤さんの決定に従う。
俺は逃がしてやってもいいと思う。
Todu looked troubled.
こいつは別にあいつらが血に狂った理由を知っちまったわけでもないんだしさ。
Wait, what do you mean by that? Oh my god, guys. To be honest, I really thought about it. Really? Okay. Hijikata saw my eyes go wide, and I saw his narrow. They flicked to Todu. Does everyone have like 5 names in this fucking game? I can't even follow who's who. No sooner were the words out of Hijikata's mouth than Todu clapped both hands over his own. I didn't see him do that.
はあ、これでますます君の無罪方面が難しくなっちゃったね。
何したるもの、死ぬ覚悟くらいできてんだろ。お前も諦めて腹くくちまいな。
A man? Oh. They thought I was a boy. Everything else that happened, I completely forgotten how I was dressed.
確かに潔く死ぬのも男の道だな。
サノの場合、まだ生きてるけどな。
The jokes were barbaric, but they both broke into raucous laughter at them. Tato did his best to ignore them.
土方さん、結論も出ないし、一旦こいつを部屋に戻して構いま
As
せ
he
ん。
spoke, Sato turned and looked at me.
同席させた状態で誰かが機密を漏らせば、処分も何も殺すほかなくなる。
Ah! He was right. I remained with them. I could easily hear something I wasn't supposed to. I think he mentioned it for my sake, only as possible concern for the Shinsengumi, but I was still glad he brought it up.
そうだな。頼めるか。
Sato nodded. The shortest sentence in all of the shit. I'm kidding.
私もその判断には賛成しますよ。ここには迂闊な方も多いですしね。
うわ、三男さん。わざわざこっち見て言うとかきついよ。
ま、仕方ねえよ。迂闊なのは俺らの担当だろ。
How long does this story have to go on for? All I've seen is, hey, I'm in this town. Something weird happened, and now they're judging me, and it's like, damn, it's like 53 minutes. It moved along a little at a faster pace here.
そんな責めるなよ。俺だって悪気はなかったんだからさ。
I could hear Todo's voice rise at everyone turned to look at him. He looked at them for a bit, then turned to me and mumbled in a voice I could barely hear. I was still afraid that I was about to die, so I couldn't bring myself to tell him no harm had been done here, but he looked as though he meant what he said, so I gave him an awkward nod. It was the most I could manage.
行くぞ。
Alright. You can now visit the status. After they take me back to my room, I sat there for a time looking down at my bound hands. Holy shit, what is this? Sure, let's save it. Yeah, sure. This is not in 720p, you can tell. You can tell because of how big and blown up that is right there. So this is 40p game. I guess you can save whenever, that's kind of nice. Like a little bookmark. Bookmark there. The rumors I had heard said the Shinsengumi were cruel, vicious men, but they seem much more human than that. Then again, even as I sat there, they were deciding whether or not to kill me. I don't think they want to kill me, but it seems like they might not have a choice. If I didn't defend myself somehow, I'd most likely be killed. I don't know how I'm supposed to convince them, though. However they might have felt about me. I get it. Okay. It was clear that their priority was the welfare of the Shinsengumi. Oh, right. They all still thought I was a boy. Perhaps if I told them I was a girl, they might reconsider. Brilliant! Or perhaps they wouldn't. Or perhaps they would make my predicament worse somehow. I had no idea what I was about to do. Next. Oh boy, guys. It's been 55 minutes of this. Let's just explain. I would tell them the truth. Perhaps if I did, they'd understand my predicament. Perhaps they'd think I'm from Kyoto as well. If I told them I'd only just arrived in Kyoto, they might lower their guard, or so I hoped. I didn't know anyone else in Kyoto, and I'd only hoped to look for my father. I haven't told them I'm a girl. I mean, this must be a Japanese thing about the speech out loud kind of thing. The rest perhaps could wait, but I felt that it might be wise to tell them I was a girl. I took a deep breath, and I shouted as loud as I could. Excuse me, is there anybody there? After a few moments, the door slid open. Several faces appeared around the edges.
大胆だな、お前さん。補修の身分で俺らを呼びつけるか。
He looked a little impressed.
で、自分から声をかけてくるなんざ。そろそろ腹も決まったのか。
Well, he was right. I had called him over. Took a deep breath and spoke. I want you to hear me out.
おそらくお前の事情は汲めないだろう。それでよければ話すといい。
Those cold words were like a blow to my chest. The courage I'd built up rapidly began to ebb.
お前の運のなさには同情する。ま、成仏してくれな。
ほら、男なら諦めが肝心だろ。
They all spoke as if they'd consigned me death. Consigned me to death. Consigned me death. It was time I made a choice. I just decided to tell him I wasn't a boy. As Sato turned to go, I rounded on Todoro and glared at him furiously.
No. なんだよ。
Earlier, you said a man should know when to accept his fate. Don't think there's anything wrong with killing a man before hearing him out? His eyes narrowed as he glared at me, and suddenly it became more interesting.
お前さ、口の利き方に気をつけろよ。そっちこそ男らしい態度取れば、俺らの事情を素直に受け入れればいいじゃん。
But I'm not a man. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, that was cool. His eyes got all big.
もしかしてさ。
Yes. Koda Nagakura's eyes went so wide, I was worried they might fall out of their sockets. A lot of... Okay. Their mouths worked wordlessly, like a pair of fish trying to desperately breathe air.
ま、確かにそんな感じだな。体の線が女性的で柔らかいというか。
そんなもんわかるか。普通女は袴なんて履かねえだろ。
Girls aren't supposed to wear pants. That's going to be one to grow on. Yes, we are at the 58-minute mark of this Hakuoki stories of the Shinsengumi. If the game continues at the pace that started at the 55 mark of me making choices, maybe I could get into this. But the previous 55 minutes of just sitting there and just reading this block of text and I don't know, guys. What I do know is that you'll be hearing more about this game on this week's Pressure Cast, which will that episode be? It'll come out on the 12th, whatever next Monday is. I know this is going to be coming out on the 8th, so the upcoming Monday. This will be out on Thursday. So go to gamesoutofpressure.com, check out the Pressure Cast. We'll talk more about this game, as well as a bunch of other things that are coming out during the week. And, you know, check out our reviews. We do a bunch of videos. If you like First Hours, you can see a First Hour on Stick It to the Man, Infamous Second Son, Dark Souls 2, bunch of stuff out there just for you. You to check out and watch. Lego Hobbit, tons of stuff. So, with that being said, thank you for watching the First Hour. I'm Colin Tanner, and I will see you next week for another First Hour. Thank you.